Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with an analysis of some of our analytics. That is my YouTube analytics. I've been doing this now for a bit more than a year and, May, June, July, and 2 months to be exact. And I thought it might be kind of fun to see which videos have done the best. And this doesn't necessarily mean all the ones that you, the most popular commentators, have watched, but the ones that everybody has watched, because there really has been quite a bit of traffic. So let's go to my analytics area here, and let me give you some numbers so that we can figure out exactly what's going on here. So we have here, let's see, wait a minute. Let me get to my analytics, and here they are. Okay, we want lifetime analytics. And this is really fascinating, actually, because I cannot believe how many people watch YouTube. I never would have dreamed in like a billion, million, trillion, gazillion years. But the lifetime of this channel, I've gotten 2.6 million views and 403,500 watch time hours. Thank you all very much. And you know my subscriber base, it's about 8,462 as of time of speaking. And really, I'm amazed. I think it's a phenomenon. I really do. But now what I want to show you, if we look at the views, is what has been the most popular. Okay, you ready? Now I have the top 50 here. Actually, analytics only gives you 500, and only those if you download them into a spreadsheet. The fact of the matter is I've done about 720 now, so I can't actually pinpoint exactly how well any one of them is doing, and of course you don't want to hear how well all 720 of them have done. But let's start at the top. You right? You ready? The best Beethoven symphony cycles, unsurprisingly, with 22,500 views. I'm not going to give you like all of these numbers, but I'm just going to give them to you in order. Then the best and worst Mahler 9, then the best Mahler 2, and then Tchaikovsky symphony cycles, and then Brahms symphony cycles, and then Sibelius symphony cycles, then Mahler 3rd, Mahler 5th, the 12 greatest Bach sets of all time. Then there's my welcome video, which doesn't count. Then Mahler 6th, Beethoven piano sonatas, Bruckner 6, Shostakovich symphony cycles, the best and worst Mahler 1st, the ideal Beethoven symphony cycle. Remember, the ideal ones are, miscellaneous performances with no weak links, as opposed to complete cycles. Those are the ones we put together. Then we get Das Lied von der Erde by Mahler, Mozart late symphonies in sets, the best Beethoven ninths, and I'm not wearing a tie because I'm just making a list here. The worst and best Schumann symphony cycles, Mahler 4, then Roger Norrington, the worst conductor ever, and then Bruckner 8, and then classical music's 10 dirtiest secrets, and then the review Kurensis, terrorized by Beethoven's 5th, trashing Kurensis, and then Bruckner 7, Dvorak New World, the ideal Mahler cycle, the best Brahms piano concerto sets, Bruckner 5, Beethoven piano concerto cycles, Schubert's Great C Major Symphony, Bruckner 4th, Sibelius 2, Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, the best Rimsky-Korsakov Scheherazade, the ideal Wagner opera list, the best Shostakovich symphony cycles, as opposed to the ideal cycle, the ideal Haydn London symphonies, finally some Haydn gets in there, the ideal Sibelius symphony cycle, and then the Why Furtwängler's 1942 Nazi Ninth really sucks. I just love that little chat. Then the music chat, did Simon Rattle make any great recordings in Birmingham? And then conductors behaving badly. And then the 6 fabulous conductor boxes. And then Mahler 8 and Holst the Planets, Handel's Messiah, the best Beethoven 5th, the best Bach Brandenburg concertos, and the best Bruckner 9th. That's the top 50. And already I think it's telling us something very, very interesting, isn't it? And that's that the old saw that the classics really sell is actually true. Now, some of us serious record collectors like you and me and many others who are commenting in, hardcore, shall we say, always talk about how boring it is to have just another Beethoven cycle pop out and how much more fun we'd have if labels would do interesting repertoire and they would spend more time, going outside of the standard stuff. But that is not what appeals to most classical music listeners, it would seem. And I think the vast majority of classical music listeners, particularly those who are not as hardcore as a lot of us are, really are interested only in the standard classics. In fact, I think probably it would only be fair not even to call this stuff that we listen to, like the Bach symphonies, classical music. Maybe we should just call it concert music. Because if the classics mean anything, it does mean that small, limited, something that's a classic, a small subset, only the most sublime, the most fabulous, the most highly regarded, the most frequently performed, the most frequently mentioned. That's what a classic is, or at least that's one definition of it. And we've talked about different definitions of what classical music is. But the reality here, when we bitch and moan about how record labels are just doing another Beethoven cycle, the fact of the matter is that Beethoven symphony is going to sell a heck of a lot better than take your pick, a Walter Piston symphony or an Alan Pedersen symphony. We're talking about subsets of subsets of subsets, or Helmut Volch's complete box of organ music. Even if it's Bach, people want a very small, limited range of classical music. And that is, quite frankly, part of what gives it its value. So, one thing we learn, the first thing we learn, is that the basic repertoire still exists. It still has the same appeal it's always had. And even though the classical music industry has gone insane with just enormous boatloads of recordings of everybody, composers old and new and known and unknown, it's the basic repertoire that still matters. An interesting fact, I think. There's another interesting fact that comes out of this, because aside from the fact that it's the basic repertoire here that's in the top 50, the only other thing that's in the top 50 are chats about how bad people are. That is, when I trash something, particularly when I trash a favorite artist, everybody comes in. And I can show you this in another way. This really is very interesting. Let's just look at the past 28 days. Here's the past 28 days. So, and in order of popularity for the past 28 days, we find the following. And remember, some of these videos were posted toward the end of the 28 days. So it makes the point even more strongly, as you'll see. So, past 28 days. First, the stupidest recording ever. That was the Abato recording that I talked about, the Rossini Il Viaggio a Reims. That was just this past week. So, and it's already at the top of the 28-day list. So complaining is always a good thing. And complaining about major artists may be the best thing. And then we have the best Beethoven string quartets, and then the Muti box that we talked about, and then the ideal Mozart late symphonies, and then another chat, what's the deal with Andris Nelson's, where we talk about him, not always flatteringly. And then Beethoven's Fourth, and then the Stokowski Phase 4 box. And then, I'm so pleased, Tough Symphonies. We got 697 views. I'm very excited. That's Tough Symphonies number 1. But as you can see, I don't have to go through 50 of them. As you can see from this list, it always pays to trash something. It really does. And, one of the things that I've noticed is that, in making these videos, and I'm just talking personally now, the ones that I value the most are things that are often viewed the least. For example, the Haydn Symphony Crusade, that talks about specific works where I really get to take them apart with musical examples, like the Bruckner Sixth Talk, for example, or the one I just did on Mussorgsky's Night on Bald Mountain. I love doing that kind of stuff. I love getting people to listen to music that they haven't heard before quite frequently. That's like the thrill I get from doing this, but it's the least popular thing on the channel. I have, I know many of you have been watching, for example, the Haydn Symphony Crusade, but in these lists, there was one Haydn title in the top 50 in the lifetime list, and none of the Haydn Symphony Crusades. Why am I doing the Bach Cantata Schlepp so slowly? And I'm still doing it, believe it or not, but we have all these other series going too. I'm doing it very slowly because I know that it's just not going to get a lot of attention, because the whole reason I'm doing it is to give unusual Bach cantatas some attention, because there's 200 and some odd of them, and you could only listen to how many? 5. I'm sure if I do Wachet auf, or one of those, on Festeborg, sure, people will look. I'm sure they will. But if I'm doing, Schlumpfist Minor Gerpitzigen Schnitz, as Anna Russell would say, that one's not going to get a lot of attention. And it's a little bit disheartening. I don't want to criticize in a bad sort of way, but a little bit disheartening that people would rather see me trash things or talk about music they've already heard a million times and already know, than listen to something new and listen to something that expands their repertoire, their range, and their fund of knowledge. It's a little bit, it's not news to me. Let's put it that way. One of the things I discovered when I started participating in musicological symposia is that even among musicologists, they would much rather talk about music than listen to it. And one of the things I was always saying at these meetings of things was like, can't we please listen to something? Please? I remember once there was a talk on, it was harmonic analysis, and what was it about? I mean, it was the most tedious talk in the entire world. Was harmonic analysis in Bach or somebody like that. And the guy is just sitting there telling us about chords. I mean, telling us in words, it's an inverted fourth chord and a 3/4. It was insane. And he's sitting there next to a grand piano. And at one point, I just felt like getting up and screaming and saying, just play it. Just shut up and play it. Let us hear what you're talking about. We have no idea. No one had any clue what he was talking about by the time he got to the end, because it was nothing but mathematics. But he could have sat there and just played the chord and said, listen to this chord, listen to that chord. Then he could have told us what we were hearing. But nobody, that would never have occurred to him. And if it doesn't occur to musicologists to actually give talks in which we listen to music, then what about the rest of us? What is there to be said for the rest of us? Now, that's, I suppose, the negative side of things. But on the positive side of things, and this is really the more important thing, nothing I find more heartwarming than, and I find it very frequently, thank God, from you, thanks to you, than when I see a comment that says, yes, I heard that. Whether you like it or don't like it, whether it's Beethoven or Shostakovich or Mahler or Bruckner, or whether it's something completely unusual, it makes my day. I quell, my heart just fills with gladness to hear somebody say, yes, I listened and I heard that. And it's the reason I exist, I'm telling you. And so many of you are doing it. And I am so grateful. I just have to tell you, it makes this whole project so worthwhile to know that there are people out there who really are interested and curious and who are willing to listen with open ears and share their opinions, whether I delete them or not. Don't worry, keep sharing them. And it's great. It's absolutely terrific. So yes, for me, I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist. I'm just a realist. And I think that we have to be realistic and just say, look, some of this stuff is genuinely classical, and some of it is only provisionally classical. What's an example of a provisional classic? The Franck Symphony in D minor, right? I mean, there's a piece that's completely out of style. No one seems to be playing it anymore. No one seems to be recording it anymore. There was a time when everybody was doing it. It seems to have gone out of fashion. And one of the things that we can safely say about the greatest classics is that they never go out of fashion. That's part of the definition of what a classic is. I mean, when you get to that borderline, it's a fluid situation. It's always in motion. Things are coming, things are added to the canon, sometimes they leave. But ultimately, there is a previously defined list of great stuff that never goes out of fashion. And that's what a classic is by that definition. And I really, you can see from these statistics that that's what people are doing. They're listening to the classics, the standard classics, and they're listening to be trash people. And that's where the fun is. And part of it, of course, is, we're all members of this community. We all get to talk about it. And we all want to talk about shared experiences so we can all participate. I understand all of this. I truly, truly do. And I have no issue with it. That's what it means to be in a community of similar thinking people, as long as it doesn't become, lemming-like crazy cult, that kind of stuff. But I understand that that's part of the fun. The fun of participating, of course, is talking about our shared experience of music. And that's a wonderful thing, a totally healthy thing. That's not what I'm complaining about here. I mean, I'm not really complaining about anything, I don't think. I think I'm just observing the reality of the situation. And I think we really should consider what it means. Consider what it means that the definition of classical music, and for all practical intents and purposes, is still quite narrow, number one. And number two, we all like a little bitchiness now and then. We all like to moan and complain and fetch and rip people to shreds. And the artists themselves really ought to appreciate that, because the more they get talked about, the better it is for them. And it doesn't make any difference whether it's positive or negative, because there is no such thing as bad publicity. That's for damn sure. Anyway, these are my thoughts. I hope that this little bit of analytics has given you some food for thought, because I'm finding it fascinating as we go to see, what gets the most play and possibly why. And it's on the one hand sobering, but on the other hand, I think very positive in many ways too. It supports the notion that the classics are the classics, which is always nice to know, but also that we can have a heck of a lot of fun talking about everything else. And I hope we continue to do so. So please, folks, keep on listening. Take care. And thank you for joining me for this completely non-musical discussion about music. Oh, I'm such a bloody hypocrite. That's life. Take care.